Welcome, everybody. We are really glad that you're here. We're going to be talking about winning more projects. My name is Ellen. I'm going to be your host today. I am joined by my fabulous colleagues, Pete Makalek and Dean Hires. We also have our behind the scenes, Troy Parkinson, running behind the scenes. So hi, Pete. Hi, Dean.
Hey.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love this topic a lot. And I think I just quickly throw out, some of you call it interviewing, some of you call it orals, some of you call it shortlist presentations, some of you call it pitching. But one way or another, we all have to face this process. So I love this topic.
Yep. Yeah, and the topic isn't necessarily just limited to the tail end of it. The way we see it, winning projects doesn't start and end with the interview process or the presentation process. It starts way back before the project is even coming out, right? So we can talk about the whole pursuit process.
Yeah, we're going to do that today. And Pete and Dean are the co-founders of Sage Presence, and collectively they have helped their clients win more than $16 billion worth of projects. So we're not going to be talking about anecdotal concepts. We're talking about real practical tools that you can use, that you're going to be a little better when you leave this webinar. We want to know a little bit about you before we get started. So we're going to do a quick poll. They don't last very long. So as the poll opens, what industry are you in? You can just type that right in the poll: architecture, engineering, construction, management, consulting, or other. Remember, these polls don't last long, so we're going to wait for your information to come in. Currently looks like architecture and construction they're vying for first place right now. All right, 10 more seconds to get those, to let us know a little bit about you. All right, looks like architecture. We have a lot of architecture firms, or people in architecture, followed by engineering and construction. Other.
Hey, we got management consulting in here. That's awesome.
That's great.
Other.
What is your role in an interview? Executive, pursuit leader, business development, marketing, interview participant. It looks like marketing. We have quite a few marketing people, business development in the interview. What are your biggest challenges in pursuits? Rehearsal and strategy look like those are the top two. So we wanted to ask that because we want to make sure that we're talking to you, that we're kind of hitting on real things that you're dealing with every day. We're going to start by talking about, this is going to be interactive, so please participate and let us know, what are you struggling with when it comes to interviews? What is the challenge? What is getting in the way? What makes interviews difficult? And as you're typing that in, Pete and Dean, will you kind of tell us what you see out there?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges that we hear our clients talk about is just sort of the readiness thing. That it feels like there's generally a lot of pressure around the team, and in their most recent experience, they will have headed out just feeling like they're not prepared. They didn't dot all their I's, they didn't cross all their T's, and so they're going to the interview with too much stress. That's a biggie that we get.
I'm torn. What I was going to say was, people don't really have a system or a strategy. And so they just kind of, they just do it all at once and discuss and build the PowerPoint. And it reminds me of the idea of, you're pouring the cement while you're laying the carpet, while you're doing the finishing touches on the paint. And and a designer is designing. You're doing it all at once. But it hit me this morning. There's another big challenge that we don't talk about that much. It's that the end cap of this whole pursuit process is an interview. It's a verbal thing. It's an orator's medium, and we spend all of our prep time thinking it through, trying to get it right, trying to have all of our headspace around something that really should be spoken. So we rehearse at the end. And, I really think we're not learning and developing our interviews in the spoken environment. That is where this plays out. You see it in rehearsals. They thought it all through, but they get up and it just isn't coming through.
Yeah.
And kind of what you were talking about here, Heather says preparation and not focusing on the client enough as being one of the challenges. That's something you see, Pete and Dean?
Totally. I mean, it's that people, the part you all know, AEC, management consulting, etc., is the work that you do, the process you use, the delivery, and all the stuff that you do. And then what we find is your orals, interviews, pitches come out about you. And you really have to figure out how to flip the script at every turn. So what I have to share is about you. Doesn't mean you don't share the same stuff. It's that it somehow has to be packaged as about your prospect. I think people really struggle knowing how to do that.
So what's
Mhm.
the opposite of that struggle, right? You come out, what is the definition of success? And this is open to everybody, so please put it in the chat box. What does success look like for you in an interview, right? How when you leave the interview and you say, "Yes, we nailed it." What does that look like?
Yeah. So my definition of success is that feeling is actually present when you're heading into the interview. Not the relief necessarily, but like the excitement. You're showing up feeling like, in a way, like you've already won, like you are like you're going to a meeting with a client, that they've already hired you, and you're feeling like you're showing up to work on this project together.
There's three ways to win in this. You win the project is what you want the most, but that's the farthest out of your control. The next win that's a little more in your control is bringing something that's going to impress a prospect, whether it's for this interview or something in the future. And the third is the excitement of practicing something you can't really practice anywhere else. So I like to think of the win as winning all the way through it. And you're winning in the preparation because you're pulling together as a team instead of fighting each other. That's win number one. Win number two, Pete talked about. You're like ready. You're like, you can feel it. Win number three is you're proud of what you delivered. And that is really where your influence has ended. A decision isn't made, but you are proud of what our team did. Man, we were a team. That was great. And then the last outcome, which is out of your control, is the hopeful win of the project. But I just would suggest you never forget that you can't get good at this without practicing it, and you can't really practice it without doing it. So these processes are part of building your people.
And just as a reminder, we want you to tell us your definition of success because we want to kind of get into that. How do you get to success? So we have one that came in. Anonymous says, our definition of success is a genuine connection with the client. Totally agree with Pete's definition of success.
Mm.
Well, actually, a quick comment on that is, let's not forget how different that is on the hybrid or virtual medium, the venue, than it is in person. I mean, it's hard to get that connection in the room, and then you have to do it here. Now, just point out, we're trying to connect to you. I can feel it. We're virtual. I can't even see you, but I'm making this about you to the point that I'm, at least on my side, I'm in the connection. And so I think part of it that's really challenging is if you have struggles making that connection in person, what do you do in virtual and hybrid circumstances, which are pretty common these days?
Yeah. I just got done with 30 coaching sessions in the last month. And what I heard quite often was, I'm never really quite sure how much time I'm going to have. But when I do have a chance to introduce myself, I want to show my personal value on a project, right? I'm not just a tag along person, but when I talk about what am I doing that can help the clients, see my value is something that a lot of people, I think, feel like that's a win.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well, I think we have a good idea of, what's getting in the way, where we want to be, what is that definition of success? But we have to get from there to there. And that's kind of that middle part of what do we do, Pete and Dean? What is that middle ground? And what are some things that we can take away that if we were to put them in practice now, that we'll be able to kind of see the benefit?
I
Yeah.
got nothing.
Well, let's see if we can scrounge around and find some ideas. The place that I always start looking is at the very, very beginning of the process, before the RFP drops, before the project is necessarily in any version of existence. It's when the prospect is just talking about the potential project. One really huge thing that firms can do is learn about this potential project in advance, and they're doing that by building relationships with this prospect that that they're confident will be a good fit for them. So they've done the research, they've confirmed that this prospect is a good fit for them. They've determined, yeah, if this project comes out, it's going to be a go, not a no-go. And they are getting themselves in front of the prospect way back at that point, so that it's not just that you know them, but they know you. It's building that relationship so that they think of you when the RFP is going to drop.
And I'm sure most of you have heard the stats. All the science on this says the lion's share of the win is occurring in the pre-positioning, and then the interview is the chance to lose it. There's this transition. I don't quite think that way. I think you can win in an interview, but pre-positioning is huge. So that's the helicopter way up high. I want to respond to this in a helicopter way down. I'm kind of fascinated by my own comment that that we're not using the spoken medium to develop our speaking process. So I do a lot of public speaking. When I develop a speech, I do not sit and pour over it in my mind and get the script down and figure out the outline. It's not that I don't ever do that stuff, but the bulk of my preparation is speaking. I go in a room, I turn on a recorder, and I start talking. And I build the outline from the things I said. So my speaking isn't following my outline. My outline is following the spoken word. So I develop all of my speaking by speaking. And you don't do that. What you all do is talk about it and discuss it from every level in this huge, chaotic discussion. And then it doesn't really relate to the spoken word. So I have worked with a few teams under the idea of rehearse as you go, so that you're not waiting for rehearsal until you figured it out. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, how should we cover our approach? Let's talk about approach for a section. Well, I think this, I think that. Okay, well, let's see it. Get up, do it. So
Yep.
that as you're forming it,
We call this process a stumble through. You get two experts on a particular topic, you get them out of their chairs, on their feet, in front of the room, and you just say, okay, hey, you two talk about this topic, and let's just hear what it sounds like.
And they're doing it too late is the problem. They could have done it 5 days ago. They wait till a point where they do this stumble through. What I'm saying is you're in your very first meeting and you're going to say, well, I'm going to have to talk about the design. Well, just give us a glimpse of it. Try it. So you speak it and develop through the very medium you're going to use in the end product. I think that's a huge mistake, is not to use the oral communication skills to build it.
We heard early on just kind of the importance of that the clients, that you know them and they know you. How does that happen? How can you give us some examples of what gets to that point?
Oh man, a bunch of possibilities. One of our favorite ways for a prospect to get in front of, excuse me, for a vendor to get in front of a prospect early in the process is to go to events and specifically see if you can get a speaking slot at an event. If you're an expert in something, look for an opportunity to communicate your expertise. Go to an event that's populated by the people you want to be known by and see if you can win an opportunity to speak in front of them. Because man, if you can provide value in a presentation to a room full of people that can hire you, they're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to have.
They're going to line up to talk to you. That's just a great way. I mean, Sage Presence builds its business that way, going to conferences. So you're not going to conferences in your industry. You certainly should and can, but we're talking about going, if you're in healthcare, you go to healthcare conferences and find that speaking slot. They will start coming to you and they will feel like, oh, I know her or him. So that's at the pre-positioning end. It's even before that. Let me go to the echo of this, the other end. You asked about connections, and there is a version of getting to know your client that has nothing to do with your ideas. So we often think of getting to know them as, I know what their hot buttons are. I know what they're sensitive to. I know what they care about. I know their subject. I know their zone. All this stuff is good. I don't to say that you shouldn't do that. But human beings get to know each other on a body language front too, and that can happen. There's no way you're not ever going to face an interview where you don't know the selection committee. There's not going to be many interviews where you don't at least know some of them. You might know some, but it's always the case that there's new people. Body language is a place to create an instant experience of knowing someone. And if you can really, really look at people and you can bring your presence, that is a communication that builds comfort. So what we're doing here in this webinar is we're really appreciating you. So some of you, not only do we not know if we know you, we can't even see you. So I don't know who's out there, but what I'm doing is I'm appreciating the kind of people that I know are there and the people that I kind of suspect might be out there. I'm appreciating you, and it brings a warmth. So when you go into an interview, part of that connection is just really looking at people like I'm looking into the lens right now, as opposed to looking at the screen. This is looking at Pete right now. This feels like eye contact, but that's where eye contact lives. So if you bring that open vibe, there is a communication sharing. And if you doubt what I'm saying, have you not been to a party or on a bus or on a train or a plane where suddenly it feels like we've been friends forever? We met 20 minutes ago, but we feel like we've known each other our whole lives. That click comes through body language. So if you start by positioning yourself, you want to finish it off by really being in the moment with individuals so they can feel your presence, and your body language can talk and create that sense of a longer existing relationship.
Yeah, and just a reminder that, you out there, let us know if you want some insights, some tips. Is there something specific that you are hoping to get some tools and practice, from our experts here? Let us know so we can address them. Dean, 2 weeks ago at an architecture firm, after one of the workshops that we did together, and one gentleman said the best feedback, or the most impactful lesson he learned was the breadcrumb theory. And just to kind of preface this, was he's just very nervous to speak in front of people. And if you don't have that confidence and you kind of come in like this, it can be interpreted that you don't know your stuff.
Do I need to tell them the breadcrumb?
Yes. So will you
I
tell
can
us
do
the
it really quick.
breadcrumb story?
Yeah. So a lot of professionals have coaches. I have coaches too. I had about 15 coaches for eye contact, and each one of them was a pigeon. I was feeding the birds, and I was really nervous because I had a speech and I wasn't that good at it yet. This was new to me. Now, just for there's you, I'm going to show you, if I were speaking to an audience, people are a different place. So there's a person, there's a person, there's a person. So anyway, I was feeding the birds, and what I realized that you could do is hand feed each bird. So I'd take a crumb of bread and I would toss it to a bird, and I would take another crumb and toss it to another. And I would gradually go around feeding each bird. And pretty soon they started to look like an audience. They fanned out and they all just were sitting there, chirp, 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 waiting for my gift. And I thought, that's what I want in my audience today. And so what hit me is essentially eye contact is the toss. Every time I look at someone, I'm making that connection. And if I care about them and appreciate them warmly, what you get is the toss of eye contact, and the breadcrumb is whatever I'm talking about. So I'm sharing a thought per person.
I love that.
A thought isn't necessarily a sentence. It might be a chunk of a sentence, but a thought per person is the breadcrumbs. That's what she was talking about. And it gives you a model. As a speaker, you're giving the gift of a thought to one person at a time and caring about them and really seeing them. And that's what forms the connection inside of an interview.
We have a comment that we have heard over and over again. So anonymous, I feel like you've summarized years and years and years of our experience is I want to help my team with their interviews, but there's so much anxiety before an interview, sleepless nights, brain fog, etc. How can I help them?
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a ton of people on this webinar here who are nodding in agreement, both with, yeah, I want to help folks who are anxious, and yeah, they're talking about me. I get so nervous. As somebody who grew up like that, somebody who couldn't stand being in the spotlight and needing to say my piece right now, and getting freaked out by that pressure, I just want to take a moment and kind of acknowledge it, that it's a profound obstacle that many, many, many people experience. And I want to go back to this thing that Dean was talking about, this idea of appreciating your audience. A lot of people out there say, what do you mean appreciate my audience? I would rather them not be there. I can do my job so much better when I'm alone. I when I get in front of somebody else, all of a sudden I don't know how to think. I don't, nothing comes to me. It's like deer in the headlights. And so the thing that I want to recommend to folks who experience stuff like that is actually start practicing in little ways when it doesn't matter. When you're on a bus, when you're sitting next to a stranger in an airport, whenever you have somebody else, instead of staring at your phone and effectively distancing yourself mentally from everybody else, see if you can just practice making some version of connection with another human being that you're sharing space with. And
this isn't too strange. I mean, you do that. You make a glimpse at somebody when you're passing at a crosswalk and you look and smile. So we're not saying to stare at the person next to you until they get uncomfortable. But there's lots of little connections you can make. And I think when you pass on the sidewalk and suddenly you get a smile and that is an exchange of appreciation. I don't even know who it was, but on some level we appreciated each other, and I didn't have to have a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So everything that you can do comfortably, see if you can push yourself beyond your comfort zone. So if you normally do just make eye contact with a stranger, maybe you could push yourself beyond that and actually say something. If it's only just like, hey, how you doing? Or, have a good day or something like that. If you usually just sort of have small talk with coworkers, what if you could actually ask them out for lunch and have a full-fledged conversation and actually learn something new about the other person? If you are the kind of person who normally doesn't do something socially, do it. Just go into a zone where there normally is some of that anxiety. And what you're going to find is you're going to grow. You're going to grow your area of comfort. And what you're going to find is in an interview, what has been just tremendously uncomfortable is less uncomfortable because you're practicing increasing your comfort zone.
So, Ellen, I know you just coached 30 some people, and you had to have been broaching this subject with our client that you were working with. What did you get? How did you help them with that?
Well, there's two things that stand out to me, and it is, I think, first of all, practice makes automatic. There
Mhm.
is an anxiety of, I don't really know what's going to happen. Do I have 2 minutes to talk? Am I going to have 10 minutes? Am I going to be standing behind a partner? And I heard a lot of, the partners, they're there and they're really good at this. And so I'm just waiting, thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to screw this up. So the practice of rehearsing as if it's real in front of, a selection committee that's, made up, to get that rhythm, and also to remind people that, Dean, you talk about this all the time. We don't like people who are perfect. So you don't have to be perfect, but rehearsing as a group can make it more familiar. And we're less nervous about when we're familiar.
Yeah. So please, everybody, release this idea that practice makes perfect. What did you say? Practice makes automatic?
Automatic.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you want to practice without the need for perfection. And you want to, your biggest thing to resist is the idea that I want to get it down first. Once I figure it out and get it down, then I'll try it. Now you have a performance moment on some ideal you've created ahead. Talk your way through it. Practice your way to getting what you want to say. Don't wait so long.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
let's talk about
Wait so long to-
reframing. Review that
Sure.
the idea of reframing. If you talk to a lot of Olympic athletes, the beam, like women who are on the beam and they're on this few inches and they're doing flips and cartwheels, and
Yeah.
nerves are the killer of being on the beam. The
Yeah.
gymnasts who have been able to say, I am so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Because the feeling is the same. So can you talk about that a little bit, of reframing the words, I am so nervous, to
Yeah.
I am excited about this opportunity that I've been given?
Yeah.
Sure. Let me start with, and I think Pete's going to directly answer your question. I want to look at that in the context of flipping the script. So I'm kind of in the headspace of that. Whenever I feel that anxiety, I'm worried about me. And if I'm worried about me, my attention is the wrong place. And somehow I'm viewing this as something that I have to do well in order to get something. I got the wrong main character of the story. So the first flip is to look at where your prospect is around whatever you're talking about. It's not about me. I'm trying to help you get somewhere else. So practicing the focus of being about them simply is, who are we trying to help? What is the problem they have? What would better look like? And what can I share to help them get there? It's not about me when I'm presenting. It's about me trying to get you to a better place. So the point being here is the mindset really has to be a helping them mindset. You're a servant hero to them. And if you ever find yourself nervous, you're worrying about you. So then it's about them, making you feel good about yourself. That's not the goal. I can feel good about myself some other time. Right now, I have to focus on getting you somewhere.
Second idea I want to hop on top of that with is, I want you to think about sort of the hierarchy of how you want to show up in an interview. At the top, is confident and warm, right? Everybody knows that they want that. You also want to show up excited, right? Virtually everybody recognizes that too. Um, Underneath that, I'm going to say it's actually reasonable to show up scared. And I say this because underneath scared is relaxed and kind of indifferent. When you don't have any of that excitement or fear energy in you, you kind of show up like, this doesn't really matter to me. And I have worked with people like that. I've worked with people who have just so gotten so beyond any anxiety. It's like they're practically falling asleep. And I'm like, I don't want to hire you. I don't think anybody would want to hire you. It seems like you know what you're talking about, but man, it's like you've got no positive impact on anybody else because you're just there kind of bringing your brain instead of your heart.
So
Yeah,
flip the script.
and
I
don't forget,
appreciate
make sure you put those comments in, what are you, where are there some things that you would like solutions to that you can be working on? I want to throw an idea for you to talk about, Pete and Dean, is this empowering team feedback, because the comment we got was about a leader and a team. So how can a team leader use empowering team feedback to make their team members more confident, but also improve without kind of busting their, self-esteem?
Yeah.
Well, a big theme that we bring is it's about acknowledging something positive. No matter what you do, when somebody practices something, it's acknowledging something positive about what they just did. So even if the first thing that occurs to you is, ooh, that's that's a problem. You want to look for something good that they did, and maybe, I mean, it could be as minimal as, wow, thank you for doing that. I know that you didn't want to do it, you did it anyway. That's awesome. Thank you for getting up and giving that a shot.
So that can be a super simple system of tell them what they did right, share only one thing that they can improve. And my augmentation there is, don't tell them anything that you can't tell them how to do. Like I saw somebody give the feedback like, you're just not connecting with us. That's not helping. If you can't tell them what to do to solve it, it's just bad news. So I always try to tell them, what are they doing right? And then I talk about an improvement, but I have to have some idea of how that would get done so I can tell them what to do, because otherwise they just feel bad. Now, real quickly, before anybody adds on to this, I just want to talk to the audience for one quick thing. There's like a whole bunch of you out there. We can talk about strategy. We can talk about specific problems you have. We can talk about hybrid. We can talk about adapting to your audience. Can you please tell us what you want us to share? We will not run out of ideas on our own, but we'd love to be speaking to your thoughts. Just chat.
I love this comment that just came in. Carol Burnett talks about this in her memoir, that she was performing a particular act she had done a million times that always killed. And one time she got on stage and wasn't nervous at all, and she absolutely bombed. It made her lose connection with the audience, and they were no longer on her side. That the nervousness shows you care.
Well, that happened to me. It's only happened a couple of times that I got just too overconfident and I just felt comfortable. The exact same thing happened. It didn't work because I wasn't nervous. Now I'm really curious for that asker. The moment it didn't work, I got terrified. And then I was great again. I mean, that was the funny thing is it shook me and I was a little rattly for a second, but because I got the nerves again, I found my performance, because like Pete said, that's part of the equation. And I'd lost my excitement because I'd gotten too comfortable. So we should love that discomfort, but do recognize you're not sunk at that point. If it starts to drop, you'll probably get a little nervous, and then now you're back in your groove. You want to appreciate heavily to make that nervousness turn into excitement. So let me round that out with a slightly different example. I got some really harsh criticism from an audience once. They were like, excuse me, you're just droning on about this stuff and we already know it and it's not helping us. And the two things that you said, I think we disagree with. It was really, really scary, harsh comment. And so I got nervous. My game came up, and what I did is I really appreciated the question. Like, oh, wow, okay, all right. Now, nobody likes to hear that on stage, but hey, thanks for voicing it. Let's unpack that a little bit. And I started talking with them. So if you flatten and you see that you've lost the audience, you should get an anxiety spike, and then you appreciate heavily, and then you can find your groove again. That's how you do that.
Yeah, we have a question from Anthony. Any suggestions on how to read the room and how to shift the presentation to address prospects' needs? I want to say that we hear this quite often. So this is a great question that's been asked.
Yeah, and Pete, I know you should respond to this. I just want to frame one thing on this that'll help you, audience. You do have to remember why they're like that. Remember that as a selection committee, they often look very poker faced, and a big part of the problem there is they're not really trying to hide anything from you. They're hiding from the voting party. So when people on a selection committee, my colleagues might like a different team than me. This is threatening. You don't realize that. So they're playing poker face because they're trying to keep their cards from their other selection committee members. And then you are more like the cards. You know, we're going to play 3 hands of poker with a project manager, an executive, a superintendent, a designer, you know, and an engineer, whatever it is. And we're the ones who vote in the selection committee. So we're the ones playing poker. So part of the problem is you're not going to get an honest feedback from them because they're trying very hard to hide it. And that makes the experience worse, but it's not real. Doesn't mean that you're not getting through.
Right, right. So the question is about reading the room, and we do recognize that there is value to reading the room, and we want to acknowledge that there are shortcomings to attempt to read the room. In my experience, I used to read way too much into into my audience's facial expressions. You know, I've seen a lot of people, you know, apparently looking really confused or or uh or upset or mad, a lot of scowling. And what I've found is a lot of people have kind of screw their faces around in weird configurations when they're really focused, when they're concentrating. So you don't want to read too much into certain nonverbals. Having said that, you do want to do your research about your audience in advance as much as possible. You want to get into their heads as much as possible, understand what they care about the most, so that you know that you're addressing the things that they care about. And when you do address those things, make sure that you make a very specific point about it. It's not just mentioning it. Oh, I know that so and so cares about prefab, so so I'm going to make sure that we talk about prefab. Don't just talk about it, but like make an argument for it. Talk about why it's so important. Make a recommendation about how to actually make sure that that thing gets done the right way.
And you
We
can
have quite a
also
few questions that
pre-read.
are coming in. So I want to
Okay,
make sure we get to the other questions too.
Okay,
Do you want
if
to
I
wrap
can
it
just
up?
give one super quick thing on this is you can also pre-read the audience. I think the question that's not being asked enough in pre-positioning is, what is the personality of each individual in the selection committee? If you can start to spot their personalities, you can pre-read them. This is a concept person. They want the concept first. Hey, this is an engineer. They're detailed. They're going to have the data. You know, they're going to want more expression or less. So part of it is pre-reading what they're like, so that you come in expressing yourself according to their personality types. And secondly, well, while you're doing the content version of that, which is what Pete was talking about.
Yeah, I like that. You know, thinking about it ahead of time, so you know how to adjust to the decision makers in the room. Mike says, what does the interviewer want from the interviewee? Could you provide insights so we can better prepare? If we flip the script but only have limited time to convey message, what gives us our biggest bang?
Okay. All right. I love that question, Dean. I imagine you and I we might be thinking about the same thing, but let me throw what's coming to mind for me.
Have at it.
The most important thing that you need to do is distinguish yourself and your team. You need to think long and hard about the project in as big terms as you possibly can. You want to ask yourself not what do we bring to this project to make it work, but more like, what's the significance of this project from their perspective? What's running around in their minds around this? What are their biggest concerns? If and when this project goes well, what does that mean for them big picture.
Mhm. I
What-
love where you're thinking. Actually, I wasn't sure where to think in that line, but coming in and talking about the
let
nuts
me
and
just
bolts.
finish my thought. Sorry, and so wrapping your brain around the project in this biggest, broadest, widest way possible allows you to start to ask, okay, so if that's the case, we're going to have a particular point of view around that. So you need to start to dig into that. What is your unique perspective around this project, big picture? And from that perspective, what do we bring?
And that's at every single tier of this. So if you were in management consulting and say you were doing a process you're improving a process, nobody wants to improve a process. There's some reason that they have to improve the process. So you're always looking at what success would be and what problem motivated this. And the things you're going to do to improve the process are to get them to that business driver. So think like business drivers. It's even easier to see in architecture and construction. I don't know if you've thought about this, but nobody wants a building. Nobody wants to pay for a building. That's not why they're doing it. They have to have it. Their business is hurting in some way without the facility that you're going to design and build for them. And there's a better place to get to. So the number one, or my number one answer to the original question is, you be the team who speaks to their business drivers and can talk about the why. So remember this, you've heard this before. We'll get to the why, get to the why. Why is not the what. What is the process improvement thing we're going to do? What is building or designing this building? Why? Because an organization has a problem and wants a goal. It's the goal and the problem are the why. Why this? Because you have this problem and you want to get to this goal. So the number one answer is get to the business drivers and be the only team that is aware of why they're trying to do that. And that should take you a very long distance.
Yeah, we have another question that says, do you have a recommendation on the best way to kick off the preparation to ensure you set the correct environment for success and are able to start on the right foot for team preparation?
And that kind of depends on whether let's see, it should start with a strategy process. Let me capture a problem that leads to the chaos. Most interview preps end up with an interview that is speaking to all the stuff in the RFP and all of that, but we're not doing it any particular way for any particular reason. We're doing it because this is the way we always do it. You know, you're going to work in the PowerPoint. You're going to start coming up with your messages. We're going to start assembling this and work to this. I like the idea that we are doing it a specific way and we know why. For example, if you knew that the prospect really was frustrated with their last person, their last entity, because they didn't listen, we felt like they weren't listening to us, that might be a strategic insight to do an interactive presentation where we present a little bit and ask them. And then when they respond, we write it down. We're strategically showing that we're listening to our client. Other clients have different needs. So what you want to do is strategize in the first step so that you and then sell the team on how we're going to go about it. Because the best interview preps start with the premise that we're going to do this interview this way for those reasons, and then get everybody to buy in on it, so that you can then go down the path of developing the interview that, you're going to execute the plan you planned. But most people just sort of form that as they go. So I'd start by saying strategy first and figure out what's our point of view, how are we going to adapt to that selection committee and their personalities, and what is the approach that we're going to take. And that sets the groundwork for everybody working toward a common goal.
Let me throw
I
out.
see you nodding your head. So something really resonated with you and I want to hear it.
Which Pete?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, Pete was nodding his head.
Oh.
So you were really in agreement
yeah.
with something that stuck out.
So yes, on top of that, or kind of mixed in with that, is interview teams in general head into these things with a question of, how are we going to do this? How are we going to sell ourselves? How are we going to get hired? Which puts all their attention on themselves and creates a whole lot of anxiety and nervousness. I think one of the best things a team leader can do is talk about this not from their perspective or from the team's perspective, but from the prospect's perspective. And have the team start to think about, how can we help them? What problem are they in right now?
Mm.
So whenever we do this, we talk about two problems that any prospect team has, or excuse me, that any selection committee has. So thing number one is they've got a project that they don't know how to work on themselves. They're not construction professionals, or they're not designers, or they're not engineers, or whatever. So they need the problems related to their building solved. The other thing is they've got a short list of candidates to choose from, and they're all qualified. The only way they got into this short list is by passing over certain hurdles, and now they've got apparently equally qualified organizations to choose from. And at that point, it can be really hard for them to pick and choose and to distinguish between them. So it would really help them if you can distinguish yourselves from the others. In a way, they want to choose apples. They want to choose between similar apples. You want to distinguish yourself in as big a way as you possibly can. That is going to help them. So you want your team to start thinking along those lines. How can we help them make this decision as easily as possible?
Yeah,
And that
we
gets
have
to one
another, we
thing-
have a
Okay, go
comment
ahead.
and another question. So I'm gonna keep it moving because, and if you have a last burning question, please put it in the chat. Because we're kind of rolling towards the end of this hour. But a comment, it's sometimes when they ask a particular question, there's a question or a concern beneath the question. I'll often say, I notice you really want to talk about this point. What's been your experience with that in the past or similar?
Mm.
So the question behind the question and digging a little deeper.
So you're saying when you sense that there's a question behind the question. Well, I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with asking. You could say, wow, here's what I'm reading this question. Am I coming at it the way you want? I think that it's somewhat fair to ask. Let me respond in a slightly unusual way, in that part of this, we lose too much energy trying to give them the answer they want, like it's a test. Like, I want to tell you what you're hoping to hear. I actually don't think that way at all. If you question this, go read an article in the Harvard Business Journal called The Challenger Sale. Just look up Harvard Business Journal and Challenger and read this article. I want to tell them what I think. Now, what I think is consistent with what Pete said. It's about how we can help them, but we spend too much time worrying about whether we're giving them the answer that they want. What I want to do as a consultant is tell them what I believe will help them. And I want to be very aware of what I think and what I'm really confident about. Because when you get to separating yourselves from the apples to apples to apples comparison, it's usually because you challenge their thinking a little bit and said, listen, it may look like this, but this is what will make the difference. So part of your presenting is telling them what you believe, your conviction about what will help them. And don't worry too much if I'm getting at what they hope to hear. But then you can follow that up with, was I getting at the core of your question? And you can maybe probe them to open that up a little more and reveal what might be behind it.
Yeah, Jackie asked, how do you get them to show their cards? I'm assuming that is the interview committee. And what
Yeah.
are they holding in their hands?
Yeah, so I think that's referencing what Dean was talking about before, where the selection committee is playing poker with each other. And so I want to follow on from that and then pass it over to Dean. I don't think you necessarily want to get them to show their cards. They're
That's what I was
playing
going to say.
poker with each other, and they're not going to do that. If you try to force them to show their cards, they're gonna get mad at you for forcing their hand in front of their peers. You want to let them play poker.
I
So-
love that answer, Pete. That's where I was going to go, because what you really, I mean, why do you need to know that so bad? The reality is the interview is more your chance to give than it is to get. Maybe getting is down the road, but in that moment, it's what you're giving. The only exception for me is I have found that even in the most stoic of Stonehenge selection committees, when you really care about them a lot and you appreciate them and you look at them, appreciation will open up little subtle tells. It's caring about them and spending a little more time with direct eye contact. So if you're one of the selection committee members and I turn to you and I talk to you, it pulls some of them, their personality out, and you can sometimes read them a little better. But I think this is my chance to give. And I'm going to try to give with my conviction about what I believe about how to help you. And as long as I keep focusing on you moving forward, and then I say, am I getting at what you want? That, you know, you're accomplishing what you need to without exposing them to their peers who they're worried about.
Yeah, and we've talked about this and seen this quite a bit with our clients, is sometimes that's the research on the front end. Would you agree? Like, what problem are they really facing? So they need a building, but the reality is they're not attracting young talent and they have an aging workforce. And those who come in there and address that, right? Like that is perhaps that is the card that they're holding, is that we have to, you know, make this friendly to places, to people who want to work here.
Yes.
That
Yes.
part of showing the card is that research part, and digging beyond the building.
Yes. Yeah. So doing your research, finding out what individuals in the selection committee care about so that you can address those things. And never bringing them out like, well, I know that you care about this. You know,
Right.
you want to throw it out like the whole group cares about this. Each person does have their own individual definition of success around this thing. You wanna mention each one of these and talk about it like everybody on this team cares about it, because because everybody does to some degree. There will be different priorities, but if you throw them all out and celebrate all of those wins, then everybody will feel like, okay, yeah, this person gets me, and in a way is kind of taking away the competitiveness of the selection committee.
Yeah. So we're kind of running up. We have 5 minutes left. Will the two of you give us your 30 seconds of the questions that were not asked that you really feel make a difference? Kind of the, you know, on your mark, get set, go.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of letting you start, Pete.
So-
Give myself a chance to think.
Okay, so for me, one of the biggest things that doesn't occur to a lot of people is that their body language is communicating all the time, even when they're not talking. And this is both true in virtual interviews and in-person interviews. I have seen a lot of people kind of check out of the situation when the spotlight's not on them, when they're not the speaker at the moment. So they're alive and energetic and doing well during their presentation, or during their 2 minutes or whatever, and then when it passes along to somebody else, you can kind of see them kind of looking up like, okay, what's the beginning of my next piece? Or they'll check they'll be with their cards the whole time.
And Pete, I gotta let Dean, because we have only a few
Right.
minutes left. So
Right, I got
body language was
two quick
key.
things.
Dean.
Quick things kind of in the
Okay.
middle range, right? Kind of in the middle of activity. I think that a focus on synergy is really important, because what often is the case is we have a whole bunch of separated people who are up together. So one answer is try to get more back and forth where we're hopping in on each other and finishing each other's sentences. That does show synergy, where a person presenting well can only show presence. The other thing I'd focus on is just that simple, is try to pay attention to when you're in the details and when you're making the point, and try to keep them separate. A lot of people mix it all together. There's their details as a point. If you can, in an interview, make your point and then unpack the details as two separate things. Here's the point, here are the details. Or let's step through the details and then make a point with them. So collectively, if you show more synergy and you get more clear on this audience is the point, these are all the details around it, it really helps them digest the material better and see the wonderful synergy of your team that they're trying to find, and you're not showing it to them.
You
Yeah,
know, we covered a lot of great content in this. You know, we will often spend, you know, hours and sessions and workshops covering this with individuals and with clients, and you had a lot of it here. So we do have this recorded. If you would like that recording, then you can kind of go back to those points. But thank you all so much for being here. We want to give a gift to you. So we're gonna do a drawing for a complimentary 1-hour shortlist interview consultation. And essentially what that is we're going to bring our best thinking and experience to you for an interview to help you win.
with an individual or a team.
Individual or a team. So get out your phones, go on the QR code, and we would love to meet you and help you win more projects and grow your business. So thank you everyone for being here. It's wonderful to be able to come together and uplift each other in our work.
Thanks everybody for sharing your questions. This has been a whole lot of fun. And yeah, if additional questions pop into your mind, you know where to find us. Just come to sagepresence.com and click on contact and send us a question.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye all.